Pippa just kind of spelled out some of the cash that these companies have in the bank right now. Is that setting us up for maybe a super cycle of M&A in this space?
Yeah, so I think it's a pretty interesting situation right now in the lithium space. You've got three main factors in my mind colliding. So what we've seen in China with respect to spot pricing, we've actually seen pricing week over week increase for the first time since about December or last year. So that negative rate of change is now plateaued. And second off, we've also seen Chile now introduce policy to try and increase state ownership of what they deem as strategic projects. Remember, Chile produced around 33% of the world's lithium last year. So that's a pretty important player within the global lithium space. And then third, and this is what's actually really interesting and piquing our interest on the space right now, is that the size of the lithium industry now actually warrants purchase by the diversified miners, right? So back 6-7 years ago, everyone thought this industry could have been a flash in the pan. That's not the case now, right? ALB, Albemarle, you just mentioned, they generated over $3 billion in EBITDA last year. Rio's base metal unit generated over $6 billion in EBITDA. And Vale's base metal unit generated around $500 million in EBITDA. So the size of these lithium businesses are now effectively warranting purchase. And on the M&A side, I think if you look at the way the space kind of shakes out, there's two main types of M&A avenues I kind of see moving this year. The first is that, as you guys mentioned, your lithium incumbents, so your ALB and your SQM, they buy on the doorstep of new EV supply chain buildouts, right? So the incentives we're seeing with respect to Biden's IRA, and then also major diversified miners.
Okay. Cole,
now seeing the industry as too big to ignore.
1 second. I want to kind of broaden this conversation outside of just lithium. We still have Pippa here. So Pippa, lithium's not the only commodity industry where we're seeing increased M&A. Why now?
Yeah, well, I mean, we saw the Newmont and Newcrest deal that was announced earlier this week, and it feels like, as Cole was mentioning, these companies are sitting on a lot of cash, and there's also now this urgency, particularly around metals that are vital to the energy transition. So while the Newmont-Newcrest deal, they are the largest gold producers, it also gave Newmont a lot of new access to copper. And so we are seeing a lot of pushing behind things like copper and lithium and nickel and graphite and kind of these metals that are essential for battery production. And I think that that's one area of focus where that now companies are sitting on higher cash. They're looking for larger deals to diversify their assets. They have cash flow, so they have more capability to kind of undertake some of these larger acquisitions.
Yeah, so I mean, we're talking about large acquisitions. Cole, you were kind of saying the same story. We also had a guest on Worldwide Exchange just a few days ago talking about just a general super cycle for commodities, including platinum. What's your outlook when it comes to platinum?
Not as well versed on the platinum side, but I think the way you can think about it is these metals are critical to the EV revolution, right? And at the end of the day, there's a saying in the industry: those who have the rock win. That's where you're going to see, I would say, the cost pressure.
So anything else we need to look out for when it comes to M&A right now and everything that's going on in this space? Obviously, the emergence of EVs are a driver. Is there any other factor that would lead to an increased interest, not only in M&A, but just in our potential rise in the commodity prices themselves?
Yeah, I think you're going to start to see a bit of a bifurcation with respect to commodity prices, especially on the critical metal side by a geographic basis. What we're seeing right now with respect to the rise of China controlling the EV processing and supply chains, effectively most lithium needs to go through China before it can get into an EV that rolls on the road anywhere in the US, right? So the domestication of supply chains, IRA incentives, those are all things that are now effectively trying to vertically integrate your supply chain. So you're seeing OEMs like GM's $650 million equity investment into LAC or Lithium Americas. These are now new sources of capital that the space didn't have previously that can also kind of supercharge that M&A cycle that you were talking about.
So, Pippa, you're just nodding when he was saying that.
Yeah, well, just following up on that, Cole, when you talk about OEMs having partnerships with upstream miners, do you think there's any worlds in which they take that one step further and actually look to acquire those upstream assets in order to secure their supply looking forward?
Yeah, I mean, 100%, right? I think that's the natural way that this progression goes. I mean, when you think about it, too, this is effectively history repeating itself, right? Ford did this with rubber plantations in Brazil 100 years ago, right? So this isn't really new, I would say. You've obviously probably heard of Tesla being in the news with respect to potentially acquiring Sigma Resources. That was a rumor that came out around 2 months ago. Tesla also just announced the groundbreaking of a lithium refinery down in Texas. So, they need spodumene feed to go into that hydroxide refinery. So it would naturally make sense. for a company like that to take out a mine.